This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
This is Tiny at Obsessive Tiny on Twitter.
And this is Mike, and you can find me at I am Mike White on Twitter.
And this is ObsessiveViewer.com's The Obsessive Viewer Podcast. Happy New Year, guys.
Another year down.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
is.
made it. Thank you guys. Oh,
this is
go
the
ahead.
episode I wait for all year long.
I'm really, really excited for this one. And just for our first-time listeners, welcome to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast. We're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show each episode. You can find back episodes at ovpodcast.com. And yeah, this is like the episode that we do. Like this is our big episode for the year.
Yeah, it's these kinds of discussions, that the kind we're about to have on this episode, that kind of are really kind of the reason for this podcast. Would you say that, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's something, I haven't known Tiny as long as I've known you, and you've known Tiny longer than you've known me, but it's something you and I have talked about for going on 10 years now, just making lists of movies and looking back on movies and comparing movies and ranking movies. It's what we do.
Oh yeah, and you are the reason why, like, in terms of ranking movies, I never rank movies until like I met you and we started discussing them more closely and all that. And then like this year is like the first year that I have like a top 10 of 2014, like a solid list. Like last year I had just a top 10 viewings and it was just a mess, but this is like one that I consciously went into the year and spent the entire year with a list of top 10. Well, that's not exactly true because I stopped halfway through with the first viewings, but anyway, yeah. Yeah. So if you guys haven't gathered from this, we are talking about our 2014 in movies, basically.
Yep.
Yeah,
we're big nerds.
Looking back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm in this podcast for the money. I mean, this is a job for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Clock in, do a little work,
Exactly.
clock out. I feel you.
Yeah. So let's just get right into it because we got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to I'm going to kind of hit you with stats about the podcast and the blog just really quickly.
Look at you.
I know, right? This because this was the first year that we had Obsessive Viewer, the blog and the podcast, like one full calendar year, from January to December. So I was all excited about that. I'll just run down really quickly on the blog side of things, which you can find at obsessiveviewer.com. There was a total of 101 blog posts. That's an 8.4 monthly average. And they break down like movie reviews. There was 48% are movie reviews, 35% TV reviews. I'm not going to go through all this, but the most active month for blogging was April for some reason. And then least active was, August. And then for the podcast, we had 55 total episodes for a 4.5 monthly average. Full episodes were 90%, bonus episodes 7%. Special episodes 1.81%, and there's other stats, but you can find it at obsessiveviewer.com. Total 2014 podcast time was 83 hours and 35 minutes and 48 seconds.
Awesome.
Like, yeah, that's 3.47 days worth of recording, or 0.9% of the year we've been in your ears. So yeah, I just wanted to start things off with like that brief little rundown.
Pretty cool. That's a lot of numbers.
It is, and this is all going to be on the site. So yeah, movie stats. That's what we're talking about today.
The fun part, movie stats.
Yes. So we're going to start off with just talking about our general stats, more numbers and all that.
General stats.
Oh, Mike with the How I Met Your Mother
I know.
reference.
I regretted it immediately.
Good way to start off 2015.
Also, sorry, television. Sorry we don't have television stats.
Right.
Yeah.
That'd be too much.
I honestly thought about that. I've thought about that like yearly. Like, how can I do that? How can I figure this out? But I mean, but then again, you know, the blog was, what was that? 35%?
TV,
which, you know, was fine.
Yeah.
plus 0.9% for editorials, but that's anyway.
Dork.
This is a window into my brain. So anyway, let's just start off by just going through our stats. Like I'll get us kicked off because I don't have any that are particularly glowing except for one. Movies watched for me. Okay, I'll go through these because this is all boring numbers and everything. But I watched. I had total viewings were 263, which is a decrease of 19% from last year. Because last year was like record breaking. Like I had 325 viewings, and that was the most I've had on record. But with 263 this year, it was 6.69% above my average. So that was good. Of those 263, 234 were individual movies. So there was like very little repeat viewings this year for some strange reason. First viewings of those were 124. And then of those, I watched 47 of them were the year of release, which was 2014. And the big one for me was 50 theater viewings, which is a big one for me because it's
damn good.
Yeah, I was and I know Mike is
You guys are cute.
I know Mike is going to kind of destroy that, but yeah, I mean 50 theater viewings was good for me. It's 51.5% increase from last year, and it accounts for 19% of my total viewings. So it was a pretty good year for me. How about you guys?
It's really good.
Yeah, I'll go next if you don't mind, Tiny.
Sure.
Total viewings is 213. That's up 23% over 2013. I'm really, really psyched about that.
Nice.
My total first time viewings was 104, which is up 94, which is only up 10%, which doesn't quite match up with the increase over 2013, but whatever, that's okay. Or 48.8% of the movies I watched were first time movies. The month in which by the way, our stats are a little different. We don't keep the exact same stats.
Right.
We just, this is just for our own lists.
Yeah.
The month in which I watched the most was October, 32 movies, or 15% of the movies watched. And then I watched the fewest in September, which is when I started my master's. Things got crazy. School started up, so it was. I'm not surprised at all that I watched 8 movies, or 3.75%. So I'm thrilled that my numbers were up. 2014 was an interesting, busy year, so I'm surprised actually that I broke 200. I have no doubt that Summer of Sandler in June had a lot to do with that, so I guess I can't be too proud.
Right.
Shocktober was strong, and to look at my stats for the last few years, 2014 is my highest total since 2011, which is kind of cool. I am, in fact, a little disappointed that I didn't meet my 2013 theater viewings goal. 64 is, of course, nothing to scoff at, by the way. It was 64. I had 65 last year, and I think my goal was 70, so I didn't hit that. So to try to explain why 64 is a disappointing number is because the week of Christmas is the only week out of the year I didn't see a movie.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I made a point to see, I do a movie a week with my buddy, and
Right.
Of course I average a little more than that because I see other movies, but just somehow there wasn't a whole lot to see, and a lot of things kind of slipped through the cracks. I was busy on Christmas, out of town all week long, and so I missed that one. And not only did it keep me from seeing one per week each week throughout the year, but it also kept me from matching my number last year, which is a bummer.
Damn Christmas.
Yeah.
I know, damn Christmas. So, my goal is to hit 70 one of these days, one of these years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I'm up next, and I did, you guys. I actually did. I watched 366 movies.
God, that's ridiculous.
So crazy.
It
so
was
nuts.
a chore. Yeah, that was tough. That's obviously a personal record. Last year I watched 320, so it's only 46 more than that, but still, that makes such a big difference.
Especially since it was a conscious effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I've had Shocktober's where hitting 30 is a chore, and I'm tired of it.
Right. It was. I mean, especially the last few months. It was tough because I got into a relationship and spent a lot of time with her, which was amazing. It was wonderful, but
Ruined everything.
ruined everything.
Just kidding.
No, but I made it through. So next, another personal record, which it's going to be a joke compared to you guys, but I watched 28 movies in the theater, which is a personal record.
Yay.
Good job.
Last year I watched 25, so it's 3 more than last year. Total first viewings were 252,
Jeez.
which is pretty good. And then this is strange given that I watched 366 movies, but only 49 of them were from my DVD or Blu-ray collection.
Huh. Interesting.
So most other stuff was Netflix. So,
Right.
Which, by the way, literally watching 366 movies in a year could not have possibly come close to doing it without Netflix.
Right.
I mean, it just would have been impossible.
Yeah, you are getting your money's worth.
Yeah, they probably hate me.
Question about that. Did you notice if they throttled your streaming service in any way? Like, it was kind of after watching a certain amount during the month, kind of toward the end of the month before it charged you again. Did you notice if there was like a certain amount of lagging here and
Not
there?
at all.
Really?
I never had any trouble with lagging or streaming issues.
Nice. See, I just remember vaguely like years ago having like that kind of thing, but I think it was just crappy internet. But
Oh, really?
that's good to know.
Yeah. So thank you, Netflix. But one of the fun statistics that was sort of not really a conscious choice at first, but after a while I realized I was kind of doing it like unknowingly, is I was watching a lot of documentaries.
Right.
And so my final count for the year, just documentaries, I watched 81.
Good
That is
God.
incredible.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So I'll post at least one thing on the blog about my kind of like my year in documentaries. So, which is sort of a snobby thing because it's like I watch documentaries.
It'll be
It's not really. You probably watch percentage-wise a normal amount of documentaries for most people.
yeah.
Yeah,
And it'll be good for people searching for documentaries. It'll be good for SEO for the sites.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, Netflix has a very refreshing and very wonderful dedication to the film, that genre of documentary. So they have tons of documentaries on there.
Nice.
And they all just look so intriguing. I just kept watching them. So,
That's cool.
so yeah, those are my stats for the year.
Okay, well, next up, we're going to talk about kind of at the end of each month. Me and Tiny do this at least. Mike, I'm not sure if you did that, but we do best first screening, best worst first viewing, returning favorite, biggest surprise, biggest letdown, all that stuff. And so I made one for just the year, and I'm gonna go ahead and just run through them quickly for all of these because a few of them are repeats from my. Well, actually, anyway, I'll run through these.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm kind of going to avoid mine, because if I don't make a list, but I'm sure any of them would have ended up on my top 10 best and top 5 worst, so.
Right. Okay. I'll talk briefly about the best first viewing was Guardians of the Galaxy, which I'll talk more about that when we get to the top 10s, but, spoiler, it wasn't my number one movie, which, we talked about this in the pod chat off the air, but, my reasoning for that is that this was the best first viewing. Like, I had more enjoyment out of it than any theater experience both times I saw it, and it holds up really well. And I actually watched it at home while writing this up, and it was writing out my notes, and it was really good. So that was the best first viewing. My worst first viewing was God's Not Dead, which I links in the show notes, guys. It was awful. Returning favorite was really tough because in my theater viewings, I had 12 of my theater viewings were at Keystone Art, which is an art house theater on the north side of town, and they had midnight screenings that I went to, like 8 of them throughout the year. But my returning favorite isn't from that. It's actually Jurassic Park. Me and Tiny went and saw it. It was the first time I'd seen it on the big screen since '93 in 2D. And And also, it was nice because we went to a new theater, like a theater that I'd never been to before, the Studio Movie Grill, which was really cool to order food and all that. And also, we went there to celebrate a fellow podcaster's birthday, Matt Quiet from the Nerds Domain. He invited us, and we got to talk to him and be on his podcast and all that. Links in the show notes, and thanks, Matt, if you're listening.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was a
really
lot
nice
of
of
fun.
them to invite us to. That was fun.
Oh, yeah, it was great. Biggest letdown, which we'll talk about later, is Interstellar. Biggest surprise was This Is Where I Leave You, which it was a surprise because it wasn't really on my radar that much, and I just came away from the theater experience with I was really happy with it. I thought it was a really good depiction of siblings and their relationships and all that. It kind of a theme for the year for me, I guess. So those are my notable movies for the year.
Cool.
Sounds good.
All right, Tiny, what about yours?
Yes. Matt also got me filling out those categories as well. I think it's kind of fun. I do it month to month, and so I picked the 12 entries from each category and picked a favorite. So my best first viewing, which for me is similar to Matt, it's not necessarily my number one of the year. It's just like the best time I had with a movie for the year. So it's actually different from my number one movie of the year. So my best first viewing of the year is Interstellar. Go to our episode about it and listen to it. We talked about it ad nauseum. So, worst first viewing of the year is I, Frankenstein.
I'm so excited to talk to you about it when we get to
man.
worst viewings.
Really? Have you seen it?
No. I'm just curious.
Okay. It's so bad. Okay. Returning Champion of the Year, again, is really difficult, like Matt said.
Mm-hmm.
It really just basically comes down to you kind of choosing one.
Right.
I mean, that's all there is to it. So mine, I went with The Dark Knight because it's The Dark Knight. Biggest letdown of the year was The Monuments Men, which was actually an okay movie. It wasn't bad or anything, but there's actually a far better version of that story called it's a documentary called The Rape of Europa. It's a few years old, but it kind of tells the same story about the lost and destroyed art by the Nazi Party during World War II. And the documentary is just absolutely fantastic. And I saw that before I saw The Monuments Men. And The Monuments Men just completely lost the narrative, and I really didn't care for it. So
that sucks. And
Yeah.
Monuments Men had kind of a troubled production because they got pushed back out of awards consideration. And that kind of telegraphed to me like, oh, I wonder if that's just not that good.
Right.
And with that cast, man,
They had a remarkable cast, and they just kept them all on such a tight leash. It was so unfortunate.
that
So,
sucks.
There were like almost no laughs from Bill Murray, which that's just atrocious. So
Yeah.
my biggest surprise of the year was Nightcrawler. It seems like I saw a trailer for it, and I was like, that looks kind of dumb. And then a week later, we went and saw it, and I was like, holy crap. And it just, I was really blown away by it. So,
Yeah.
and then I added in another category that I have had fun with this whole year. It's called my best newcomer of the year, which is someone that is new to me, like a director, writer, actor, something like that, who maybe they're not new to the industry, but I have never seen them before, so they're new to me. And for the year, I chose the writer and director of the film Blue Ruin, named Jeremy. I don't know if it's pronounced Saulnier or Saulnier. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But yeah, that movie's from 2013. It's only his second feature-length film. But I spoke about that in a previous potpourri for one of our other episodes, and man, he just blew me away with that. It was kind of like it felt a lot like a Coen Brothers movie.
Oh, nice!
Just
cool.
so well done, and I'm excited to see what he does in the future. So,
Cool.
Those are mine.
Was that his first?
His second feature-length movie.
Did you say that?
I did.
Ah, crap.
Thanks for listening, buddy.
Well, the dogs are barking. Anyway,
Yeah, excuses.
And for me, like I said, I don't really keep those kind of stats. I don't really want to. I feel like I might step on the toes of my top 10, so I'll
Okay.
just
That's cool.
I'll just kind of leave that in suspension for a little while.
fair enough. All right, so next we're going to do our worst movies then. And since you guys have lists of 5 and whatnot, I'm trimming mine down from 10 to 5 for this discussion. You can find the full list on the blog.
Did you have 10 plus honorable mentions, dishonorable mentions?
I did, and that was
dang.
yeah, and it was
Negative Nancy.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. When I got to dishonorable mentions, it was all like, okay, well, I kind of like that movie.
There's some bad movies this year. So.
There were, but I kind of avoided a lot of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll just go around the table. And Mike, do you want to get us kicked off with your number 5 worst viewing?
Yeah, sure. All right, so I'll try not to repeat a lot of the stuff that you'll read in the blog post, but my number 5 worst movie of the year is Godzilla.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that would also be the most disappointing movie of the year. I really wanted to like it. I wanted to go in expecting that it would be a step up from the Matthew Broderick 1999 version, 98 version.
Yeah.
And so it's hard because I think people still haven't seen this movie, so I don't want to spoil a whole lot. But one of the big twists, kind of toward the beginning of the movie, was really too big for the movie to overcome. And I think the movie Godzilla promised one thing, and kind of gave us something else entirely. I thought the CGI was really good, but Godzilla felt really ancillary. And so it's not a truly terrible movie, but it's just not that good.
I agree. That was actually one of my dishonorable mentions out of my top 10 kind of thing.
Yeah.
But and I agree completely. And it was funny because I have little blurbs for each one. And this one I struggle with because I don't remember much of it. I just don't care.
Me too. That's the worst thing you can say about a movie almost, is that it's forgettable.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Should I go next, or Tiny, do you want to go next?
I can go next.
Okay.
You got the biggest list, so.
Yeah.
My number 5 worst of the year is The Counselor, which was it was massively disappointing more than anything else, given that it's a Cormac McCarthy original script, which he's kind of a big name, and I've liked some other movies that were based on his books. But I have a lot of issues with him as a writer, so I guess I'm not too surprised. The movie was it was so aimless. It just bounced all over the place. I was like halfway through it and I didn't know what it was about. And there was a lot of this, it was so anecdotal and like this, it just lacked a vision so hard. There's cool stuff about it. Cameron Diaz kind of bangs a car, which it's I know, try to picture it in your mind and you're like, what the hell? But when you see it, you're like, oh. So I mean that's kind of awesome, but at the same time, it's like the rest of the movie is horrible. So
wow.
It just wasn't very good.
It's funny. I like Cormac McCarthy a lot. Well, I've read The Road, and I think The Road is just so beautifully written.
Yeah.
To each their own. But I kind of came away from that. I was like, my God, it felt just so real. And that's kind of also why it doesn't surprise me that you didn't like The Counselor, because I mean, screenwriting is a visual medium, and I think that was his first screenplay, and I kind of wonder if the shining example that I glean from his writing is his descriptions of the environments and everything, then that's going to get lost in screenwriting, so that doesn't surprise me.
I respect him as an author because I think he's fearless. I like the choices he makes, but I would never say he's a bad writer. I just don't connect to him that much. So,
Mike, did you get around to seeing The Counselor?
No, I did not see it.
No, me neither.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah. All right. So my number 5 is actually Annabelle. I wrote a review on the site, links in the show notes and all that. But it was just, it's got a couple of decent scares, but what the big problem I had with it was that it set up a really interesting plot point involving like satanic cults and stuff like that. That's very true to like the setting of the environment that they were in, but then it completely abandons it for just cheap jump scares and a really boring climax that they telegraphed so hard in the lead up to it so it was just not good. I didn't like it.
It was tough for me. I'm surprised I didn't put a horror movie on my worst list, because I saw a lot of turds this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I would have done had I done another horror movie, I would have kind of ranked just about all the horror movies this year and picked the worst one to put it on my worst list.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't think Annabelle was the worst one. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because of, you mentioned a few of the good scares. The one at the beginning was incredibly effective.
So good. And even in the way it's shot, it's a jump scare, but it's also just really well executed.
Yeah.
No
good.
pun
I mean,
intended.
cinematography in a horror movie is not something you really talk about all that much because when it's done effectively, you don't notice that it's the art of cinematography. And so it was just the first 20 minutes or so was a shining example of this. You're totally right. It fumbled completely throughout the rest of the movie. But did you see Ouija?
I didn't, because
Ouija is far worse than Annabelle.
And the reason why I didn't see Ouija, because I really think that could be an intriguing premise for a horror movie. But the reason I didn't see it is because I found out from like a guy at work who works at a movie theater also that it was PG-13.
And
I was like, yeah, that just completely killed it.
Weak.
Yep.
Yeah, Ouija.
Yep. It felt like it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tiny, did you see Annabelle?
Nope. No. Don't plan to.
Yeah, keep it that way.
Yeah. Ugh.
Well, my number 4 then is The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1.
Mm.
Huh.
Interesting. And this I'm going to borrow from my little blurb. Remember how good Catching Fire was? I know. It's hard, isn't it? Mockingjay Part 1, I'm kind of repeating myself with Godzilla. It wasn't really a terrible movie, but I've never seen a movie, where they split it. You know how Peter Jackson split The Hobbit into 3, and we of course know that the final Harry Potter story was split into 2. I've never seen one that was more blatantly a money grab, and I hate it so much. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 was literally 2 hours of exposition and setup for the next movie. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. And so on principle, it has to be on my worst movies of the list because it offended me as a movie goer who spends money on movies.
Yeah. I didn't see it. I still haven't even gotten a chance to see Catching Fire.
Catching Fire is great.
That's what I hear.
It is.
And
Yeah.
I've been meaning to catch up to it, but maybe I'll watch the whole series before in the lead up to Mockingjay Part 2.
Yeah, you should, because you'll want to see the next one right after to watch the bad taste, get some sort of resolution, some sort of climax. I don't know.
Well, Jennifer
I left
Lawrence
the
is in
movie
it, so yeah.
thinking, what did I just see? What did we learn about these characters? Absolutely nothing.
Oh,
That sucks.
such a shame.
Yeah.
I have a small anecdote about it that it's.
Sure.
I might cut this out of the episode, but just like last night, there was like a fight in a shooting kind of incident. I don't think anyone was hurt, but it was on the north side of Indianapolis, like Castleton. But I read an interview or like a news article about it, and like they said that people in the theater it referenced like seeing Hunger Games. They could hear it outside the theater, and they ushered out and all that. And it was all that. And when I read that, all I thought was like if I was in that position, I would like try to just be like I would be like, oh yeah, we heard it, and I was glad because that movie wasn't that good, and I would kind of just ease into like a review of the movie.
And it would end up in an official police report.
Yeah, or in just a news article about it, or like if they're interviewing me on TV or whatever, being like, it was just at the moment where Katniss has her archery equipment, and I thought that it was shot really well, but the movie itself wasn't. Yeah. Anyway, stupid. That they got me through a long night of blog writing.
Classic Matt.
Yeah.
Funny. My number 4 is I think I'm probably stealing this from Mike, but A Million Ways to Die in the West.
That's my number
okay.
3.
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about it in a past potpourri, I think.
I think we did.
So it's just not funny. I mean, it just wasn't funny. There's 1 or 2 lines that are sort of memorable, but it's just not funny. And Seth MacFarlane needs to do something different. Just something refreshing. Just change it up a little bit. So,
yeah.
Yep.
We talked about that in OV089, by the way.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I'll talk about that when I get to my number 3. Spoiler alert. But yeah, my number 4 is actually Tusk.
Oh.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, so.
Yeah, it's Mike. You saw it? I take it.
Yeah, I loved it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
wow.
It was so great. It was so Kevin Smith.
It was so not for me. I did not like it. I have a review that should post next week. I'll just read the blurb that I have for it. Kevin Smith's body horror movie doesn't work nearly as well as the podcast episode it was based on. Tusk is a mess in pacing, tone, dialogue, and acting. Justin Long's Wallace is immediately and aggressively unlikable, and the rest of the cast lacks any empathy. The scenes and characters meant to set up the rest of the True North trilogy are flat and distracting. And also an addendum to that, or an extension of that, is that it's funny that Kevin Smith made a horror movie based on a podcast, and the horror movie aspect of it didn't work on me. And the podcast part of it didn't work on me either, because they're basically just shock jocks in it. It's like, it's a weird, I don't know. I didn't like it. I thought it was just a mess, and I won't give away who it is. I didn't give it away in the review either, but there's a character introduced kind of at the halfway point that just completely clashes with the tone of the movie, that the tone that the movie meandered its way into creating in the first half. And Michael Parks, I thought, was completely wasted, and just really dry and really boring, with just a little like flourish of self-awareness to the point where he was like kind of joking about this horrible thing that he was doing. It didn't work for me. I thought that it was just a total mess. Yeah, so that's my number 4. Sorry, Mike.
I don't know. That's okay. Hey, you don't
Yeah?
have to
Do you have any-
apologize for what you didn't like. But,
Right. Do you have any counter to that? Maybe it's something I missed.
No, I don't know that it is something you missed. I think we just kind of, I'm not even going to say we saw two different movies, but something about it affected me, clearly a way it didn't affect you or affected you differently.
Different strokes.
Different strokes for sure. And you're absolutely right about the guest star that kind of showed up toward the middle of the movie. That was pretty bad. A lot of the characters were severely underdeveloped and unlikable, but maybe I'm not doing what a good movie reviewer should do, but something about it, I just went in with the attitude that we're supposed to find this whole thing silly, and it doesn't. I mean, the way I love what Kevin Smith said about you might think you're prepared to see a man as a walrus, but I assure you you're not. And just the shock of that alone was enough for me to say, yeah, I enjoyed the movie. The reaction of my friends in the theater as it was happening.
I will give it credit that seeing the fruits of his labors, it was the high point of the movie for me.
Yeah. It's not. I mean, it's not in my top 10. It's not in my top 20. But yeah, it's not. For me, it's not one of the worst.
Fair enough. Quick question: did you listen to the episode of the podcast that it was based on?
No, I have not. I keep meaning to, but
I kind of wonder if maybe that is why it's on my worst of list.
It's possible.
Because, I mean, the way that they talk, and it's a really awesome episode. Like, you guys should listen to it for sure. But the way that they talk about it, or the way that they basically pitch and develop it on the air is, it's fascinating to me just because it's just interesting to hear creativity basically being born on a podcast. And B, it's just the story that they map out is just so much more satisfying than what is in the finished movie. Yeah. And also the Clerks scene with the two girls was just that it's going to be the basis for Yoga Hosers, his next movie. And I was like, I went into it hearing him talk about how captivated he was by that scene for obvious nepotism reasons. And then also hearing like people talk about how it was funny and all that. And I was like, it is so cringeworthy for me. It didn't work for me on any level, and that makes me worried for
cringeworthy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just the delivery and how just bland the characters were. I don't know. I did not.
I mean,
like
they
this
looked
movie.
like teenagers to me. They acted like teenagers.
And maybe that's part of it.
I think it's definitely the podcast had an adverse reaction on you.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Mike,
you're number
3.
3. Yeah. Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas.
That's your number 3?
Yeah, and here's my reason for that. is because I went in expecting it to be poor. So if I'm going to treat my best movies as not just the best movies, but also my favorite and the most fun I had, then I kind of have to treat my worst, not necessarily as the objectively worst movies I saw, but also kind of the experience of the whole thing. And so I went into Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas kind of with the whole plot in mind. I knew exactly what I was going to get. It offended me in exactly the ways I thought it was going to offend. It is a horrible affront to Christmas. I hope Christians hate this movie. I hated this movie. I hate Kirk Cameron. Everything you can hate about this movie is on full display the entire time. But I guess I expected it to be that poor. So I kind of I'm not going to say I give it a pass, but it did exactly what it set out to accomplish. Which is piss me off and make Kirk Cameron look like an idiot.
Okay. So it offended you the way that you expected it to offend you, and that's why it didn't like shock you with its offensiveness.
Yeah, it wasn't shockingly awful.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So if I made this list again in another month, it would probably be the worst. Mm-hmm. And over time, I'll probably say, oh yeah, that time I saw Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas, yeah, that was one of the worst movies I ever saw. But I have a lot more to say about my number one, so...
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't wait to see it. My number 3 is Blended, which we talked about a little bit. I don't know. I think I'm just setting off on a personal vendetta against Happy Madison Studios. And if they're going to continue to put out this crap, I'm going to put it on my worst list every year. And I think it belongs there. I thought it was terrible. Just terrible. For multiple reasons.
Yep. That's one of my honorable mentions.
The kids were actually okay in it. I think we mentioned that when we talked about it.
Yeah.
The kids were decent actors and stuff. But if they're just going to continue doing this stuff, it's like it's putting out this tripe. It's terrible.
Relative to the rest of the Sandler canon, I kind of had to give it a pass. If I saw it independently, I might have agreed with you, but after watching Grown Ups and Grown Ups 2 and so on and so forth,
that's true.
It was one of my favorite movies of the summer.
Jeez.
That's a breath of fresh air.
That's funny. It's my first honorable mention. And we'll talk about it when we get there, so that's no big deal. But yeah, I totally.
Oh, positive honorable mention.
No. Worst
you mean
honorable
dishonorable mention.
Dishonorable mention. Yeah, sorry.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but and also if you're listening, if you're interested in hearing our review of it, it's episode 58. Anyway, so my number 3 is actually Tiny's number, what was it, 4?
Yeah.
Which is A Million Ways to Die in the West. And just to echo what Tiny said, it's not funny. The best scene in the movie was in the trailer, and the only reason why it's the best scene in the movie was because it played on the nostalgia of the audience. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the movie was just Seth MacFarlane going through, telling us why living in the Old West sucked, and using humor that felt like it was that came from abandoned drafts from Family Guy scripts, like scripts from Family Guy's lesser episodes. Yeah. I didn't like the movie. It was so disappointing to me. Disappointing because I thought it looked pretty good, but yeah, and a waste of talent too. I mean, they had a lot of good people in it. Liam Neeson's barely in it. He's the villain. He's barely in it, and then. Neil Patrick Harris was also just,
Giovanni Ribisi.
And Giovanni Ribisi, yeah.
Amanda Seyfried.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah, so it was just, that's my number 3. I didn't like it.
Sucked.
Yeah, and my number 2 is A Million Ways to Die in the
West. Nice.
Yeah, I don't really like Seth MacFarlane's work all that much anyway. I don't really like his ultra reference ADD brand of humor, but I think A Million Ways to Die in the West kind of marked a new low for him.
Mm-hmm.
The worst you can say about a comedy, is that it didn't make you laugh, and it never made me laugh. I was angry after watching this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I laughed at it. I laughed at some of the parts, but it was also kind of just laughs that nothing. I can't tell you a joke from it.
Yeah.
Now, and I couldn't tell you a joke about it. I couldn't tell you a joke from it like 72 hours after seeing it.
Yeah, me neither.
Yep.
My number 2 is God's Not Dead. Just a highly offensive movie that deserves to be criticized very much because it tries to make a statement, and it makes it very poorly and inaccurately. And just from a filmmaking standpoint, just terrible all around. Bad script, directing was nothing to note, and the acting was pretty bad. So, yep. Really bad movie. Definitely see it though because it's hilarious at points. Just its awfulness is funny.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's your number 2. That's what I can't get. But anyway,
let me say mine are not really in a particular order.
Oh, okay.
I just kind of have them. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
My number 2 is actually As Above, So Below.
Oh.
Which we talked about in episode 72 of the podcast, but I don't even know if I would say that it was a theater experience because we had people talking behind us the whole time and all that. But I was just so like the second that the movie started, I was just so uninvested in it, and it didn't do anything to really get my attention. The concept was pretty cool, but it just didn't deliver for me on really any way for me, and I just came away from it being like. Feeling like it was just kind of just a waste of time. And I rarely call movies a waste of time.
Yeah.
But As Above, So Below just had so little to offer that it just was a waste of my time and my money.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that, actually. I
Really?
thought the movie was quite effective. I'm going to say something that's going to sound uber douchey, and I apologize for that. But one of the things I pride myself in my kind of investment into the horror genre is I really look for a lot of deep cuts, and I've seen a lot of turds. I own a lot of turds. And so like when I see particularly one that is not straight to DVD, and has a little bit of production value to it, it's hard for me, and maybe that's detrimental. Maybe I'm not going about it the right way, but it's hard for me to not give movies that are at least slightly passable a pass, considering some of the real trash that I've seen.
That's a really interesting perspective to going into horror movies, because horror movies are just some of the, I mean, I would say per capita, there's more trash in horror movies than any other genre.
Absolutely.
And that's a really interesting, and maybe I'll have to like use that in the future, like use that kind of lens of seeing movies, horror movies like that.
But we're not
because it's hard because then we do get really good horror movies.
Yeah.
I mean, they just run the breadth of quality in the horror genre is unmatched by any other genre. Well, we saw Man Overboard, so maybe there's also comedy.
But yeah, we're discussing the movie not in the context of horror, but in the context of a year's worth of movies. So
this is true.
Yeah.
That's also true.
right.
Yeah. And I don't even think I saw it in October, did I?
I don't know.
No, I don't think it came out in October.
Yeah.
We saw that together. I wanted to see something else. I think it was something that was like really good.
Probably.
But you wanted to see this. I was like, all right, sure. I think it was in October because you wanted to see a horror movie in the theater in October.
Yeah, it might have been.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it may have been like late September.
Okay.
But
Honey, what'd you think of it?
I thought it was okay. I mean, I thought some of it was a little bit effective, but it might have made my dishonorable mentions. I don't have any dishonorable mentions, but I thought it was just okay.
Okay.
And the theater experience was fun for me because the movie was just I just didn't care about the movie, and I got more entertainment out of listening to the jackasses behind us talk.
I got more entertainment about imagining what I would like, how I would yell and scream at these people.
Yeah. Let me say, your reaction was much better than mine. Like, I should be pissed off because I paid to see the movie and stuff.
Right.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just bad.
Yeah.
Whose turn is it? Mike, are we down to our number ones?
Yeah, number ones. It's
All right.
Mike.
Is this number ones?
Yeah.
All right. My number one worst movie of 2014. Worse than Godzilla, worse than Mockingjay, worse than Saving Christmas, and Worse Than a Million Ways to Die in the West. And looking back on my list, I kind of wish I switched Saving Christmas and A Million Ways to Die in the West, but whatever. The worst movie of the year is Transformers: Age of Extinction. It is the worst movie of the year, you guys.
Nice.
After I saw this movie, I begged people on Twitter that we need to band together and stop these movies from happening. It is at the point now where state-of-the-art special effects, and make no mistake, Transformers give us state-of-the-art special effects, okay? I'm not blind to that, are meaningless. I mean, it is, they totally do not make up for all of the faults that this movie had. Silly, dry, meaningless dialogue, same old action set pieces, non-existent character development, everything that you can pick wrong about a Michael Bay movie happened in this movie multiple times. Anything before you might have cared about Transformers is now gone. If you like Shia LaBeouf at all, he's gone, and sorry to break it to you, Marky Mark doesn't do a whole lot better.
No.
My biggest thing is that in the past, you kind of knew you were going into a crappy movie, but even up to the third Transformers movie, when they would show you a new way a robot could bend, or a new way a robot could get an arm cut off or a head cut off, those were kind of cool. And you went, kind of cool. There is nothing new about Transformers: Age of Extinction to even make it worth seeing at the cheap seats. This was the worst movie of the year.
Wow. I disagree.
Oh, man.
Did you see it, Tiny?
I did see it, yeah.
Wow.
I can't... the only part I can argue with is that it was the worst movie of the year, of what you said.
Okay.
But I think it's a very... I think your opinion's very personal.
Okay.
Because I feel like you just kind of have a vendetta against this franchise and Michael Bay.
I'm like a fan of Pearl Harbor.
I don't want to speak for you.
But
that's just kind of what it
go
feels
ahead.
like.
Keep going.
It's just like I thought. I think certain people, including myself, will go to a movie because we want to see some stuff blow up, and it doesn't get any better than Michael Bay doing that. But it's possible to make that kind of a movie and have it with good characters and good acting and a good script and a narrative story that carries you through it. But Michael Bay chooses not to do it. And that's so frustrating. I get that so much. But man, I still had a lot of fun with this movie. I really did. I thought some of the dialogue was a little funny. I mean, I don't know. I can't argue with a lot of what you said, but I had fun with it.
What's tough for me and why it wasn't fun for me is that, I'm kind of a slight defender of the first movie. I know, Matt, we kind of made fun of you at the beginning of the summer because you said you were a fan, and then you saw it again and kind of took that back. Yeah. It's really not bad. It's the kind of action movie you're talking about, Tiny.
Yeah.
And even in comparison to the other Transformers movie, this one doesn't hold a candle.
Yeah. I will say that it is very frustrating because... At the fourth movie, actually from the first movie on, there has been zero effort on the part of the producers, directors, screenwriters to build on anything. It's like you said, it's more of the same for all four movies.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating. I get that, but it's still so much fun to watch the robots fight each other.
I guess there was just. I wanted to see a new way for a Transformer to get his head ripped off.
Yeah. Well,
I have continued to go to these movies, and that's kind of what I'm saying. Like I for some reason I keep going, but I'm not going anymore. I won't see another Transformers movie.
There were the Dinobots. That was new.
I guess, but they didn't do anything. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
really can't argue with what you said. I think it totally is. It's justifiably on your list. I don't disagree with that at all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I avoided this movie. I didn't see it and everything, but I have one question for you guys. Mike, you said that everything you hate about Michael Bay is in this movie. Is there a 360 slow motion shot kind of tracking around one or two characters looking into the distance in a dramatic moment? Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I hate that so much. It's such a lame trademark of his. But yeah, and I haven't seen a Transformers movie since I woke up halfway through Transformers 2. So I'm following your lead, Mike. I'm going to avoid this franchise.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Tiny, did you give your number one?
No, not
It's
yet.
your turn?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, but it's I, Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just such a bad movie. Pardon my language. It's so bad. Hollywood needs to stop taking legendary, and I'm talking legendary horror archetypes and making them sexy. Frankenstein is a monster. He's an amalgamation. He's a disgusting amalgamation of body parts. He's a monster. And Aaron Eckhart, I confuse those two every time.
Me too.
All the time. Aaron Eckhart was ripped and hot in this movie. Like, what? Please explain this. It's so stupid. It doesn't make any damn sense. But that's only one factor of why this movie was so bad. List anything, the acting, the dialogue, the writing, directing, special effects. It was all mediocre at best, if not really bad. Yeah.
Huh. So worse than God's Not Dead, though.
Yes, because I expected God's Not Dead to be bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. I can.
And God's Not Dead had a point.
Yeah, okay. I
stupid-
can't argue with that.
It's a stupid point I don't agree with.
No.
But they had a point. And this movie just had no point whatsoever.
Okay.
I Frankenstein.
That's okay. That's my defense. I can't believe I'm saying that. That's my defense for Saving Christmas.
Right.
Is that it had a point.
Okay.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
This movie, I Frankenstein just had no point.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Mike, did you get around to seeing that one?
No, I avoided that one.
I forgot. I honestly forgot that it existed until I saw Tiny's list.
Yeah.
I completely forgot that it was a thing, and I got it confused with Dracula Untold when I read it. But yeah, my number one has a point, but I hated it regardless. God's Not Dead, just because. In setting aside the religious, in-your-face propagandizing in the movie. Setting that aside completely, this is just a poorly constructed movie on every level, and it's filled with just atrocious writing and just really, really, really terrible performances that will take you out of the movie multiple times throughout its kind of meek runtime. I think it's only like an hour and a half. I don't remember. Yeah. But man, I really, really did not like this movie on the movie going level, regardless of the point that it was making. And like I wrote a review on the blog. It was actually the most popular review blog post all year. And also Tiny and I recorded an episode of The Secular Perspective about it. Mm-hmm. And we also talked about it on episode 50, the Religion and Movies episode. So I'm officially shutting down God's Not Dead from coming out of my mouth in conversation on this podcast. It is my worst movie of 2014, and now it's 2015. Bring on Saving Christmas.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was bad.
That does it. Those are our worst.
Yeah. What's next? Dishonorable mentions?
Yeah, I don't have any.
Neither do I.
Wow. Okay, yeah, I'll just
That's
run
what
through.
we were talking about. I thought we were skipping that because we don't have any.
Really quickly, my dishonorable mentions for the year. It was just blended, nonstop, Let's Be Cops, What If, and Transcendence. Those are my 5 dishonorable mentions. I felt kind of guilty putting What If there because I thought it was kind of charming in parts, but it was just really formulaic and cliched. So yeah, those are my dishonorable mentions.
Cool.
Yeah. Hey, it's Matt with the worst transition ever. If you're noticing the abruptness of the end of this episode, is because I'm splitting it into 2. We recorded a lot for our year in review episode, and I decided to split it between worst movies and best movies. That way it kind of gives us a little bit of free time to do, it's a special thing that we're planning on doing for later this year, and that frees us up with recording next week. So you'll know more about that in the coming months. But I hope you enjoyed our worst movies of 2014 part of our 2014 in review episode. If you want spoilers for the next week's episode for the best movies of the year, check out the blog for all three of our blog posts about it, and links and everything are in the show notes. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. I will see you next week. Or I won't see you, you'll hear me. Yeah, this is getting weird.
As always, loyal listeners, thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. And thank you, of course, to Loud Like for providing our awesome opening theme music. Their first EP, their first of a few actually coming out in the next few months. Check them out. Anyway, it's called Mistakes We Must Make and features our theme song and a clips of events. Make sure that you rate and review us on iTunes after you listen to this episode. It helps us out a lot, and it gives us the ability to say, hey, people like us. Also, please like our Facebook page at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer, and you can follow each of us on Twitter. You can find Matt at Obsessive Viewer, Tiny is Obsessive Tiny, and me, Mike, I'm at I am Mike White on Twitter. You can also check out the blog at obsessiveviewer.com, where all three of us, but mostly Matt, review movies and TV shows and talk about all kinds of things. It's kind of the written form of this podcast. You can also check out Obsessive Book Nerd, which has book reviews and commentary on the evolving world of reading. And also check out Tiny's The Secular Perspective, which is a podcast exploring the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. If you have any thoughts on the podcast in general, or this particular podcast you just listened to, or even suggestions for future podcasts, please email us individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at obsessiveviewer.com, or you can just email the podcast directly as a whole, kind of directed to all three of us, at podcast@obsessiveviewer.com. Again, thank you so much for listening. We love you. Be excellent to each other.